market prices for most grains and oilseeds, rice accepted, but most grains and oilseeds prices have fallen over the last 18 months or so. And so that is giving some pressure for farmers. Energy prices have been quite volatile. The issue in Europe, though, is even more intensified. Some of the European exports were going through the Red Sea. That also has affected them proportionally more than, say, the U.S., where when you lose things like fuel subsidies or you have cuts in fuel subsidies, those are just additional costs that you have to bear. And I think those are the sorts of things that do precipitate, concerns by farmers and other things, because, fuel is a big component of overall production costs, and having to absorb more in terms of those costs. But a bulk of agriculture around the world is unsubsidized, and they're competing in this environment, and they would give you a very different answer, I think, about level playing fields. It's legitimate for farmers certainly to be concerned about the regulatory environment and what those costs mean for their sector. Agricultural prices have generally come down. I mean, we're really talking far, far lower than what we saw in the early 2022, for example, where we had wheat and maize and soybean prices hitting nominal record highs, and they're down considerably from there. If you were to look at wheat prices or corn prices by 2022, by the end of 2022, they had gone back pretty much pre-war levels, but food price inflation was still continuing to rise. And in countries like the UK and US, we saw double-digit food inflation, and that really was because of post-farm gate costs. So things like energy costs, things like wage rate appreciation, other sorts of things, that were affecting every step of food processing all the way to the retail shelf. We haven't really seen food prices fall. The rate of increase has slowed to the more historical rates, but I think people still think back 2 years ago and say, boy, this meat is still very expensive relative to what I was paying 2 years ago. I think that people are going to feel like, and rightly so, it's a lot more expensive to purchase groceries than it was 2 years ago. This is just tension in an overall environment of falling prices when you have more product coming in. Farmers are always sensitive to imports. We've seen some increase in exports over what we had seen certainly for the last several months since the collapse of the Black Sea Grain Initiative, and now it looks like export levels, at least for the time being, are at those levels or even higher, and so that would certainly take a lot of pressure off of the amount of produce product that was ending up into Eastern Europe. I think that if it's seeing going out more traditional routes through the Black Sea, that would certainly ease pressures on those local markets.